The massive space station hung in orbit around the blue and green planet like a metal moon. Inside its gleaming corridors, beings from 12 different worlds walked together for the first time in galactic history. The Galactic Educational Consortium had taken 300 years to build and represented the greatest achievement in interspecies cooperation. Hyunwoo Kim pressed his face against the observation window and watched his home planet Earth grow smaller behind them. The 17-year-old human had never imagined he would be selected for the exchange program. His black hair was still messy from the launch, and his simple Earth clothes looked plain compared to the flowing robes and metallic suits worn by other students. "This place is huge," said Jiwon Park as she joined him at the window. The 16-year-old girl carried herself with confidence that made the alien students step aside in the hallways. Her dark eyes took in every detail of the station's design with the sharp focus of someone used to leading others. Taemin Lee approached them with his usual gentle smile. Despite being the tallest and strongest of the human group, he moved carefully to avoid bumping into the smaller alien students. His broad shoulders and muscled arms made him look like he could break things just by breathing too hard, but his voice was always soft and kind. "Have you seen So Young anywhere?" he asked while scanning the crowd of colorful beings filling the corridor. His concern for his fellow humans was obvious to anyone watching. Before Jiwon could answer, a blur of movement caught their attention. So Young Choi came running down the hallway at a speed that made several alien students jump out of her way in panic. Her athletic build and quick movements marked her as someone who spent most of her time in motion. She slid to a stop beside them with perfect balance. "You have to see the gymnasium," she said with excitement lighting up her face. "It has gravity controls and obstacle courses that change every few minutes. This place makes our school back home look like a playground." Ambassador Velthari approached their group with 4 arms moving in what humans had learned was a greeting gesture. The Centaurian stood 8 feet tall with skin that looked like living crystal. Her voice came through a translation device that made her sound like wind chimes. "Welcome to your new educational environment, young humans," she said, with what they assumed was friendliness. "Your species integration packet contains all necessary information for successful cultural adaptation. Please report to Orientation Chamber 7 in 30 Earth minutes." The ambassador moved away with the flowing grace of her species, leaving the 4 humans looking at thick data tablets filled with alien writing. The translation software worked slowly, making their reading difficult and confusing. "Look at this," Hyunwoo said as he pointed to a section about daily activities. "They want to know about our educational background and physical conditioning methods. There's a whole page asking about combat readiness and survival training." Jiwon frowned as she read her own tablet. "Mine asks about leadership structure and tactical decision-making in stress situations. Why would they need to know about that? For school? Maybe all species have different ways of learning," Taemin suggested as he struggled with the alien interface. "Some of these questions are really strange, though. It asks about casualty rates during educational activities." So Young looked up from her tablet with confusion written across her features. "Casualty rates? What kind of schools do they think we come from? The worst thing that ever happened during class was when Minho broke his arm during gym." The orientation chamber filled with students from across the galaxy. Humans found themselves seated between beings that looked like walking trees, crystalline creatures that hummed instead of speaking, and others that defied easy description. The diversity was overwhelming and beautiful at the same time. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the room, showing Ambassador Velthari and 2 other officials. One was clearly from a water-based world with gills and fins, while the other seemed to be made of living metal that shifted and changed shape as it moved. "Welcome to your first day of galactic education." The ambassador's voice filled the chamber. "Each species will now provide basic cultural information for integration purposes. We will begin with our newest members, the humans of Earth." Yunwoo felt hundreds of alien eyes focusing on their small group. He stood up slowly and cleared his throat before speaking into the translation system. We come from Earth, which is mostly water with land masses scattered around. Our people live in many different cultures and speak many languages. We have been studying science and mathematics for thousands of years, and we recently developed faster-than-light travel. Tell us about your educational conditioning methods, prompted the metal being in a voice that sounded like grinding gears. Our records indicate human youth undergo extensive preparation for adult roles. Jiwon stood up to help answer. Our schools focus on learning through many different methods. We have classroom time for academic subjects, but we also have something called recess, where students can relax and play games. A ripple of interest went through the alien audience. Several began taking notes on their various recording devices. Please elaborate on these recess activities, Ambassador Velthari said, with what seemed like increased attention. Are these training exercises disguised as recreational activities? Not really, So Young said as she joined the conversation. We just play games like tag or hide and seek or dodgeball. It's mainly for fun and to get some exercise between classes. The water being leaned forward with obvious fascination. You engage in pursuit scenarios and projectile combat during educational periods? This is most interesting. It's not combat, Taemin said with his gentle voice. We just run around and try to catch each other or throw soft balls. Nobody gets hurt except maybe a scraped knee sometimes. The aliens began talking among themselves in their various languages. The humans could not understand most of it, but they sensed growing excitement and concern in the crowd. We will need detailed reports on these training methods, the metal being announced. Human educational techniques appear far more advanced than initial assessments suggested. The four humans looked at each other with growing confusion. They had only been trying to describe normal school activities, but somehow the aliens seemed to think they were talking about something much more serious and important. As the orientation continued with other species presenting their cultures, the humans noticed that many alien students kept staring at them with mixtures of fear and admiration. Whatever they had said about recess had clearly made a strong impression that none of them had intended. The day ended with room assignments and meal schedules. As they walked to their dormitory section, Hyunwoo could not shake the feeling that their simple description of playground games had been misunderstood in ways they did not yet comprehend. Professor Zix Thala's laboratory occupied 3 levels of the station's research section. The Andromedan's 12 tentacles moved independently as she reviewed data streams from multiple sources. Her bulbous head pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep concentration. The professor specialized in xenobiology and had studied over 40 different species during her long career. But humans presented puzzles that challenged everything she thought she knew about developing civilizations. The initial assessment was clearly incomplete, she muttered to herself while examining brain scans of the human students. Their neural pathways show adaptation patterns consistent with high-stress survival training, yet they claim their conditioning was recreational. In the Comparative Species Studies classroom, Kai-Jun Yu sat between a Rigelian student whose skin changed colors with emotion and a vegan whose multiple eyes tracked different objects simultaneously. The 15-year-old human had always been good at chess and strategy games back on Earth, skills that seemed to translate well to galactic academics. Today, we will discuss educational methodologies across cultures, announced Professor Zixathala as she entered the room with flowing movements. Each species develops young minds according to environmental pressures and survival requirements. Humans, please describe your early conditioning protocols in greater detail. Kai-Jun looked around at his human friends before answering. Well, we spent a lot of time in classrooms learning math and reading, but the most memorable parts were probably recess and gym class. That's where we did most of our physical activities. Describe these physical conditioning exercises. The A, Professor said while her tentacles manipulated recording devices. Our preliminary reports suggest sophisticated combat preparation disguised as play behavior. Jiwon spoke up from her seat near the back. I guess you could call some of it combat training if you really wanted to. We played tag, which involved hunting down targets and eliminating them from the game. The goal was always to be the last person standing. Several alien students gasped audibly. The Rigelian next to Kai-jun turned bright red, which their species did when experiencing fear. Elimination protocols during childhood development, Professor Zix-Thala noted while her bioluminescent patterns flashed rapidly. Continue with your description. Then there was dodgeball, So-young added with enthusiasm. That was all about projectile warfare training. We would divide into two armies and throw balls at enemy targets until we eliminated their entire force. The spherical ammunition wasn't supposed to cause serious damage, but direct hits could really sting. A Centaurian student raised two of his forearms. Your species trains children to withstand pain from projectile weapons. This explains much about human pain tolerance levels. Taemin shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It wasn't really about pain tolerance. We just threw soft rubber balls at each other. If you got hit, you were out of the game. Sometimes we played with multiple balls for increased difficulty. Multiple projectile management under combat conditions, the professor noted with what sounded like admiration. Your species begins advanced tactical training at remarkably young ages. Hyunwoo tried to clarify their meaning. Really, it was just games. We also played things like Red Rover, where two lines would face each other and try to break through. Enemy defenses. The goal was to capture prisoners and break their formation. Capture operations and line-breaking maneuvers, whispered a Vegan student to her neighbor. No wonder they achieved space travel so quickly. The class continued with humans innocently describing playground activities while aliens interpreted everything through military and survival lenses. When Jiwon mentioned King of the Hill, she described it as territorial control exercises, where groups fought to maintain dominant positions against all challengers. The objective was simple, she explained. Eliminate all opposition and maintain territorial dominance for as long as possible. Sometimes battles could last for entire recess periods. Professor Zix-Thala's tentacles writhed with excitement. Sustained territorial warfare scenarios lasting extended periods. Did casualties mount significantly during these exercises? Casualties? Kai-jun looked confused. I mean, sometimes people fell down or got grass stains on their clothes. Once, Dongmin scraped his knee pretty badly and had to go to the nurse. Medical intervention protocols for combat injuries, the professor noted. Your species maintains battlefield medical support even during training exercises. The aliens began discussing among themselves in hushed tones. Words like advanced, terrifying, and efficient came through the translation systems clearly enough for humans to understand. What about hide and seek? So-young said, trying to lighten the mood. That was more about stealth and reconnaissance. One person would hunt, while others used camouflage and concealment techniques to avoid detection. A student from the water world raised a webbed appendage. Individual hunter tracking multiple concealed targets simultaneously? How did your species develop such sophisticated predator capabilities? It's not predator training, Taemin said with growing frustration. One person closes their eyes and counts to 10, then tries to find everyone else. When you find someone, they help you look for the others. Coordinated search and capture operations with expanding hunter teams, Professor Zix-Thala recorded. Humans demonstrate natural pack hunting instincts from early development. After class ended, the human students gathered in the corridor looking bewildered and concerned. Other species gave them wide spaces as they passed, and several aliens pointed at them while speaking in urgent whispers. Did we say something wrong? Hyunwoo asked his friends. They're acting like we describe military training instead of playground games. Maybe their species don't play games the same way we do, Jiwon suggested. Some of them seem really fragile compared to humans. What we think is normal fun might seem dangerous to them. Kai Jun noticed a group of Rigelian students practicing what appeared to be their version of tag. Instead of running and catching each other, they moved slowly and carefully, barely touching their targets before declaring them eliminated. Their version lasted less than a minute and ended with all participants checking each other for injuries. "Look at that," he pointed out to his friends. "They're trying to copy our games, but they're being super careful about everything." "That's not how tag works at all," So Young said with a laugh. "You have to actually chase people and catch them. How is that supposed to be fun?" Professor Zixathala appeared beside them with her silent tentacled movement. "Humans, I require additional information about your recess conditioning for my research. Are you available for detailed interviews?" "Sure," Taman said with his usual helpful attitude. "What do you want to know?" "I am particularly interested in casualty rates, equipment requirements, and psychological conditioning techniques used during these combat simulations. My initial research suggests your species has developed the most efficient warrior training program in known galactic history." The four humans looked at each other with growing alarm. Their innocent descriptions of childhood games had somehow convinced the galaxy's leading xenobiologist that Earth schools were secretly military academies. The misunderstanding was growing larger and more serious with each conversation, and they had no idea how to fix it without making things worse. Chancellor Morden stood 12 feet tall with skin like ancient bark and eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 years. The Vegan leader had governed the educational consortium since its founding, and very little surprised him anymore. However, the reports about human combat conditioning had captured his attention in ways that concerned his staff. "These humans present an unprecedented situation," he said to the assembled faculty in the main conference chamber. "Their casual descriptions of childhood training suggest military preparation far beyond anything we have encountered." Da Hai. Shin sat in the human dormitory common area, unaware of the growing concern among alien leadership. The 16-year-old girl had been team captain of her soccer club back on Earth and missed the daily practice sessions. She bounced a ball against the wall while her friends studied their alien textbooks. "I wish they had proper sports facilities. Here," she said to Wu Jin Nam, who was doing push-ups in the corner. The 17-year-old wrestler maintained his training routine even in space, much to the fascination of alien students who often gathered to watch his exercises. "The gymnasium has some interesting equipment," Wu Jin replied between repetitions. "But most of it seems designed for species that can barely lift their own body weight. I tried the strength training machines yesterday and broke 3 of them just by using normal effort." Their conversation was interrupted by Ambassador Velthari entering the common area with her 4 arms carrying official documents. Her crystalline features reflected the room's lighting as she approached the human students. "The Faculty Council has requested a formal demonstration of your recess conditioning methods," she announced with ceremonial gravity. "Your educational techniques have generated significant academic interest across multiple disciplines." "A demonstration?" Dahai caught her ball and looked confused. "You want us to show you how we played games back home?" "The Council believes your combat preparation methods could benefit other species," the ambassador explained. "We have allocated the primary gymnasium for your presentation tomorrow. Several distinguished researchers will observe and document your techniques." Hyun Woo looked up from his studies with concern growing on his face. "We keep trying to tell everyone that recess wasn't combat training. We just played normal games that kids play everywhere." "Your modesty is noted," Ambassador Velthari said with what might have been approval. "However, our analysis indicates otherwise. Please prepare demonstrations of tag elimination protocols, projectile warfare training, and territorial control exercises." After the ambassador left, the humans gathered to discuss their situation. They had noticed that alien students treated them differently now, with mixtures of fear and respect that made normal friendships difficult. "They think we're some kind of warrior species," Jiwan said while reviewing the demonstration requirements. Every time we try to explain that games are just for fun, they think we're being humble or secretive. Maybe if we show them actual games, they'll understand, So Young suggested. Once they see how harmless everything is, this whole misunderstanding will clear up. The next morning, the primary gymnasium filled with alien faculty, students, and even some off-world observers who had traveled specifically to witness human combat techniques. Recording devices floated throughout the space, while medical teams stood ready for casualties. Chancellor Mordun took his position in the observation gallery alongside Professor Zixathala and Admiral Kretok, a Centaurian military expert who had arrived that morning. The Admiral's forearms were covered in ceremonial battle scars, and her reputation as a tactical genius was known throughout the galaxy. "Begin your demonstration when ready," the Chancellor announced through the communication. System Day High stepped onto the gymnasium floor with a soccer ball under her arm. "We'll start with what we call football, though some places call it soccer. It's a game where two teams try to get the ball into the opposing goal using only their feet." She began juggling the ball with her feet, knees, and head while explaining the basic rules. The alien observers watched intently as she demonstrated ball control techniques that seemed to defy physics. Her movements were fluid and precise, showing years of practice and natural athletic ability. "The objective is tactical ball control," Admiral Kretok noted while recording everything. "Notice how she maintains perfect spatial awareness while manipulating the projectile. This level of coordination would take our soldiers months to develop." Wu Jin joined the demonstration by playing defense, trying to steal the ball from Da Hai. The two humans moved with speed and agility that made the alien observers gasp. What they saw as a simple soccer drill looked like an intricate combat, dance to beings who had never witnessed human athleticism. "Observe the coordinated strike patterns," Professor Zixathala said with excitement, making her tentacles writhe. "They alternate between offensive and defensive postures while maintaining constant movement. This is clearly advanced battlefield maneuvering disguised as recreational activity." "Now we'll show you tag," So Young announced while setting up a playing area with cones. "Hyun Woo will be it first, and he has to catch one of us. When he touches someone, they become the new hunter." The game began with Hyunwoo chasing his friends around the gymnasium. The humans ran with casual ease, changing directions and using obstacles while the aliens watched in amazement. Their speed and reflexes seemed superhuman compared to most galactic species. "Look at their pursuit tactics," Admiral Kretok whispered to her aide. "The target acquisition and tracking capabilities are extraordinary. They maintain visual contact while navigating complex terrain at high velocity." When Hyunwoo finally caught Tae-min, the larger human took over as the hunter. His size and strength became apparent as he covered ground with long strides, though he was careful to control his power when making contact with his friends. "The role transition appears seamless," the Chancellor observed. "Each individual adapts immediately to changing tactical requirements. This suggests extensive cross-training in multiple combat specializations." The humans continued their demonstration with dodgeball, using soft foam balls provided by the gymnasium. They divided into teams and began throwing at each other with accuracy and speed that impressed even the military observers. "Projectile warfare with multiple ammunition types," Admiral Kretok noted. "Notice how they calculate trajectory and timing while under fire from multiple directions. Their reaction speeds allow them to dodge incoming projectiles while maintaining offensive capability." When Ji-won caught a ball thrown by Kai-jun, eliminating him from the game, the aliens interpreted it as a complex defensive maneuver combined with counterattack protocol. The catching technique neutralizes enemy fire while simultaneously eliminating the threat, Professor Zixathala explained to her students. Human tactical thinking operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The demonstration concluded with Red Rover, where two lines of humans linked arms and challenged each other to break through their formations. The aliens watched in fascination as the humans used teamwork and strategy to succeed at what they interpreted as assault and defense training. Coordinated line breaking with prisoner capture protocols, the Chancellor summarized for his notes. Their team cohesion and tactical coordination exceed anything in our military databases. As the humans finished their presentation, they noticed the stunned silence in the observation areas. They had hoped to clear up the misunderstanding, but the alien faces showed even greater awe and concern than before. "Questions?" Dahai asked hopefully. Admiral Kretok stood with all four arms raised in what her species considered a salute of respect. "Your combat conditioning methods are the most sophisticated we have ever encountered. How long does your species require to train individuals to this level?" "Train?" Wu Jin looked confused. "We've been playing these games since we were little kids. Most humans learn them when they're 5 or 6 years old. The revelation that human children mastered such advanced techniques at young ages sent shock waves through the assembled aliens. The demonstration had convinced them beyond doubt that humanity was the galaxy's most naturally gifted warrior species, and the humans had no idea how to change their minds. Admiral Kretok arrived with a full military escort and scientific analysis team 3 days after the demonstration. The Centaurian commander had spent decades studying warfare across the galaxy, and the reports about human combat conditioning had pulled her away from important defense preparations on the Rim worlds. Her 4 arms bore the ceremonial scars of 23 major campaigns, and her reputation for tactical brilliance was legendary among military circles. "This is the most significant development in galactic military science in centuries," she announced to the assembled research team in the station's main briefing room. "If these humans have truly developed such efficient warrior training methods, we must understand and document everything." Young Ho Bei sat in his comparative literature class, completely unaware of the military analysis taking place 3 decks above him. The 15-year-old human had always been good at resolving conflicts back on Earth, serving as a playground mediator when other kids disagreed during games. His calm personality and fair judgment had made him popular among both human and alien students. "The assignment requires cultural comparison essays," Professor Dintar explained to the mixed species class. His insectoid features clicked as he spoke through the translation system. "Choose one aspect of your species' development and compare it to another student's background." Young Ho raised his hand with innocent curiosity. "Could I write about childhood games? I've noticed that different species play very differently than humans do." A ripple of interest went through the alien students. By now, most of the station knew about human combat conditioning and treated the topic with respectful fear. "An excellent choice," Professor Dintar agreed. "Perhaps you could describe the specific techniques your species employs during these training exercises." Meanwhile, in the gymnasium, Hyrin Ko was practicing jump rope while other students watched from a safe distance. The 16-year-old girl had been jump rope champion at her school back home and maintained her skills even in the low-gravity environment of the station. Her movements were fluid and precise as she performed complex patterns with the rope. "Incredible reflexive training," whispered a Vegan observer to his companion. "Look how she maintains perfect timing while the projectile moves around her body at high velocity. This must be evasion conditioning for avoiding enemy fire." Hayren noticed the growing crowd and smiled at what she assumed was friendly interest. "Would anyone like to try? It's really fun once you get the rhythm." The alien students backed away nervously. To them, her invitation sounded like an offer to undergo dangerous combat training that might result in injury or worse. "Perhaps we should observe your technique first," suggested a Regellian student whose skin had turned the pale blue of anxiety. "We need to understand the safety protocols before attempting such advanced exercises." In the Military Analysis Center, Admiral Kretok reviewed footage from the gymnasium with growing amazement. Her tactical staff had spent hours studying the soccer demonstration, breaking down each movement and interaction for strategic implications. Notice here, she pointed to a holographic replay of Dehai's ball control techniques. She maintains awareness of multiple moving targets while manipulating the projectile with precision. The spatial calculation requirements are extraordinary. Her teammates provide coordinated support, added Commander Velthok, the Admiral's tactical specialist. They create diversions and blocking patterns while she advances toward the objective. This level of team integration takes our special light forces years to achieve. And they claim children learn this at age 5, the Admiral said with disbelief coloring her translated voice. Either humans mature at incredible rates or their natural combat instincts are beyond anything we have previously encountered. The formal assessment began the next day with the arrival of the Galactic Council's Military Evaluation Committee. Representatives from 8 major species gathered in the observation deck overlooking the main gymnasium, each bringing their own recording equipment and analysis teams. "We appreciate your cooperation with this assessment," Chancellor Morden announced to the gathered humans. "The committee requires detailed documentation of your training methods for potential integration into other species' educational programs." Humans exchanged worried glances. They had hoped the previous demonstration would clear up the misunderstanding, but instead it seemed to have made the situation worse. "We keep trying to tell everyone that these aren't training methods," Hyunwoo said with frustration clear in his voice. "They're just games we played for fun during school breaks." "Your humility is admirable," Admiral Kretok replied through the communication system. "However, our analysis indicates capabilities far beyond recreational activities. Please begin with your most basic techniques." Young-ho stepped forward with his characteristic calm demeanor. "Maybe we should start with something really simple. How about hopscotch? It's probably the most basic game we know." He began laying out a hopscotch court using tape and markers while explaining the rules. You throw a small object onto the numbered squares, then hop through the pattern while avoiding the square with your marker. The committee members leaned forward with intense focus as Young-ho demonstrated the hopping sequence. His balance and precision appeared superhuman to beings who had never seen human athletic ability. "Observe the movement patterns," Professor Zixthala noted for her research team. "He maintains perfect stability while navigating complex terrain on a single appendage. This is clearly advanced balance and precision training. The target placement exercise demonstrates exceptional accuracy," added the Andromedan military observer. "He consistently places the projectile in designated zones while calculating trajectory and force requirements." Hayrin joined the demonstration with her jump rope, performing increasingly complex patterns while the committee recorded every movement. Her speed and coordination seemed to defy the laws of physics from the alien's perspective. "Evasion conditioning with mobile obstacles," Admiral Kretok explained to her aide. "She maintains perfect timing while the barrier moves in predictable patterns around her body. This would be invaluable for avoiding enemy detection systems." "The rope manipulation requires precise motor control," Commander Velthok added. "She adjusts speed and direction while maintaining continuous movement. Our soldiers would need months of training to achieve this level of coordination." As the demonstrations continued, a young Rigelian student named Ziltako approached Young-ho with curiosity overcoming his natural caution. "Human Young-ho," he said through his translator device, "I am interested in the casualty rates during your hopscotch training. How many of your species are injured during these precision exercises?" Young-ho looked confused by the question. "Casualty rates? Nobody gets hurt playing hopscotch. The worst thing that happens is you might lose your balance and have to start over." "But surely the combat conditioning must result in some training injuries," Ziltako pressed. "How do you prepare young humans for the physical stress of these exercises?" "Combat conditioning?" Young-ho's confusion deepened. "It's just a children's game. You hop on squares drawn on the ground. There's no combat involved at all." The alien student's skin shifted to bright orange, indicating shock and disbelief. You claim that precision movement training with projectile accuracy exercises is merely recreational? This cannot be possible. Young-ho realized that something fundamental was being lost in translation. Wait, do you think our games are some kind of military training? They're not. We play them because they're fun, not because we're learning to fight. The word fun caused problems with several translation systems, producing confused static and error messages. The concept did not translate well into many alien languages, creating even more misunderstanding. Fun is not a recognized educational methodology, Admiral Kretok announced from the observation deck. Your species has clearly developed such advanced techniques that you no longer recognize their military applications. Jiwon stepped forward with growing frustration. Listen to what we're saying. These are children's games, not military training. We play them because we enjoy them, not because anyone is trying to turn us into soldiers. Enjoyment of combat preparation is a concerning psychological trait, Professor Zixathala noted. This suggests natural warrior instincts that have been integrated into your species' basic development patterns. The humans looked at each other with despair as they realized their attempts to clarify the situation had only made things worse. The aliens were convinced that human recreational activities were actually sophisticated military training, and every explanation seemed to reinforce that belief rather than dispelling it. The great revelation was not what the humans had hoped for, but rather the galaxy's growing certainty that Earth had produced the most naturally gifted warriors in known history. Dr. Zephyria had spent 2 centuries studying the development patterns of emerging civilizations across the galaxy. The Andromedan anthropologist's 12 publications on species integration had become required reading in academic circles, but her latest research threatened to revolutionize everything scholars thought they knew about warrior cultures and childhood development. The implications are staggering, she announced to the packed auditorium in the station's main lecture hall. Humans have achieved what military theorists considered impossible: the complete integration of combat training into recreational activities at the most fundamental developmental levels. Seungmin Oh sat in the front row of his galactic politics class, unaware that he had become the subject of intense academic study across multiple star systems. The 16-year-old human had been selected as the unofficial spokesperson for his species after demonstrating natural leadership abilities that impressed both students and faculty. Today, we discuss the integration of new species into galactic civilization, Professor Kethmar explained, while his translucent form shimmered in the classroom lighting. The recent addition of humans has raised unprecedented questions about military capabilities and peaceful coexistence. A Centaurian student raised 2 of her 4 arms. Professor, the report suggests that humans undergo combat conditioning from early childhood. How does this affect their potential for peaceful integration? An excellent question, the professor replied. Seungmin, perhaps you could address these concerns from a human perspective. Seungmin stood with the confidence that came naturally to him. I think there's been a misunderstanding about human nature. Yes, we played games as children, but we're not a violent species. Most humans spend their lives trying to avoid conflict, not create it. Yet your recreational activities demonstrate sophisticated tactical thinking, challenged a Vegan observer. How do you reconcile peaceful intentions with such advanced combat preparation? That's just it, Seungmin replied with growing passion. They weren't combat preparation, they were games. We played them because they were enjoyable, not because anyone wanted to train us for war. His words carried conviction and sincerity that impressed even skeptical listeners, but the alien interpretation remained unchanged. To them, his passionate defense sounded like the calculated rhetoric of a master tactician trained in psychological warfare. Meanwhile, 3 sectors away from the educational station, Dr. Zephyria's preliminary research paper had reached the Galactic Military Council. The document, titled Unconscious Militarization: How Humans Achieve Combat Excellence Through Recreational Activities, was being transmitted to defense planners across known space. The evidence is overwhelming, General Thexavora announced, to the emergency session of military leaders. This human species has developed training methods that produce natural warriors without the psychological conditioning problems we associate with military cultures. Their children achieve tactical proficiency levels that match our elite units, added Commander Bill Nock from the Rigelian Defense Force. Yet they maintain the emotional stability and creative thinking of civilian populations. Back on the station, Mi-Young Lim was writing in her personal journal, trying to process the strange turn their exchange experience had taken. The 15-year-old girl had always been analytical by nature, and the aliens' reactions to human behavior fascinated and confused her in equal measure. Day 47 on the station, she wrote. The aliens still refuse to believe that our childhood games were just for fun. Every time we try to explain that tag and dodgeball are normal playground activities, they become more convinced that humans are natural warriors who don't even realize our own combat capabilities. Her roommate, a gentle vegan student named Silthera, looked up from her own studies. Mi-Young, may I ask about your species' pain tolerance training? The medical reports suggest humans can withstand injury levels that would incapacitate most beings. Pain tolerance training? Mi-Young looked confused. We don't have any special training for pain. Sometimes people get hurt during sports or accidents and we just deal with it. But the reports indicate that humans continue functioning despite injuries that would require immediate medical intervention for other species, Silthera pressed. How do you develop this resilience without conditioning protocols? Mi-Young tried to find words that would translate properly. I guess we just learn to cope with minor injuries as part of growing up. If you skin your knee falling off a bicycle, you don't stop riding bicycles. You just put a bandage on and keep going. Silthara's leaves rustled with what her species expressed as amazement. Your species treats injury as a learning experience rather than a trauma requiring recovery. This explains the psychological profiles we have observed. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement that all students should report to the main assembly hall for an important presentation. The auditorium filled with beings from across the galaxy as Chancellor Mordun took the stage with obvious ceremony. Young beings, he announced with the gravity of ancient wisdom. Today marks a historic moment in galactic civilization. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding humanity's status within our community. The human students looked at each other with growing anxiety. They had hoped their exchange experience would lead to normal integration, but the constant focus on their supposed warrior abilities suggested otherwise. After extensive analysis and observation, the Chancellor continued, humanity has been granted immediate full membership in the Galactic Council with a special designation, as unconscious warriors. This classification recognizes your species' unique combination of natural combat capabilities with peaceful intentions. The alien students erupted in what passed for applause among their various species. Whistles, clicks, and harmonic tones filled the auditorium while the humans sat in stunned silence. Furthermore, Chancellor Mordun added, human recreational training methods will be studied and adapted for implementation across galactic civilization. Your games have been classified as essential military science. Xiong Min stood up with determination filling his voice. Chancellor, with respect, we need to make one thing clear. Our games are not military training. They are not combat preparation. They are simply activities that human children enjoy because they are fun. The assembly hall fell silent as hundreds of alien beings focused on his words. Xiong Min looked around at the diverse faces watching him and realized this might be his last chance to make humanity's position understood. We appreciate the honor you want to give us, he continued with diplomatic skill beyond his years. But humans are not warriors. We are explorers, scientists, artists, and dreamers. We came to the stars seeking friendship and knowledge, not conquest or conflict. His speech was eloquent and heartfelt, demonstrating exactly the kind of strategic communication abilities that the aliens interpreted as proof of human tactical superiority. The more passionately he argued for human peaceful intentions, the more convinced they became of human military genius. "Your modesty honors your species," Chancellor Mordoun replied, with what sounded like paternal pride. "The galaxy will benefit greatly from human wisdom and unconscious combat expertise." As the ceremony concluded and students began filing out of the auditorium, Mi Young returned to her journal with mixed feelings about their new status. "Day 47, evening entry," she wrote. "We have officially become the galaxy's most feared and respected species by accident. Our attempts to convince everyone that we just wanted to play games have somehow made us legendary warriors in the eyes of the entire galactic community." She paused in her writing to watch alien students practicing modified versions of human games in the corridor outside her room. They wore protective equipment and moved with exaggerated caution, turning simple activities like hopscotch into elaborate safety exercises. "The irony is incredible," she continued writing. "We came here, hoping to learn about other cultures and make friends. Instead, we have become the standard by which all other species measure combat readiness. Every playground game we ever played is now considered advanced military science." Through her window, she could see ships arriving from distant systems, bringing military observers and researchers who wanted to study human training methods. The station was becoming a center for strategic studies, all because a few teenagers had tried to explain why they enjoyed playing tag during school recess. "I suppose there are worse things than being respected," Mi Young concluded her journal entry. "But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had just said we spent recess sitting quietly and reading books." The thought made her smile as she closed the journal and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as humanity adjusted to its unexpected role as the galaxy's unconscious warrior species, a reputation built entirely on childhood games that no alien civilization could believe were anything other than sophisticated military training disguised as innocent fun.